Ah! Yeah, who says I have to do that? So I did. Got that over with anyway. So it is another, not quite on camera. That'll do. Session of relaxing painting with dice and dungeons, and I'm here with the dragonkin, and these were printed on a rosin printer. I don't know, it feels like months ago. I think I get like one done per stream, maybe. So that's 4, and then I spent a day fabricating a sword. So this has been like 5 streams worth of just, you have to do 3 flips. Okay, I'll do a flip in a bit, but let me do the intro. I need to use up a lot of time today because the allergies, I don't know, whatever came through, whatever front came through, whipped up the allergies, and I'm sniffling, and feeling my eyes are all watery, and so I don't know. I'm gonna complain a little bit more than usual today, so just be prepared for that. Dragonkin family. So these were printed on a rosin printer, now probably at least a month ago, and I've been slowly churning away at them. This is the first one I did. Okay, the bronze dragonkin. I think that came out pretty well. I like how shiny it is, It's shiny. Yay. And then there's a red one. This one was originally pink with red trim, but that didn't look very good, so now it's red with pink trim. See, that was the third one I did. The second one I did was the blue. The blues came out all right. It's kind of, understated. And then the green, as you might recall, this was nearly done, and then there was just this minor disaster of the holder it was on falling over, the sword breaking off, totally disappearing. And so on Monday, on our abbreviated session, I fabricated a replacement blade and a hilt, because that was missing as well. And then this one was missing a hilt and a handle, and I pieced that together. This one's going to be the black dragonkin, and then this one donated various parts to the others and has no weapon at all. But it's sitting there raising its fists, cheering everybody on. This is the cheerleader one. And I decided I'm going to paint this one kind of silvery colors. It's going to be all metallic. So it's going to be a silver dragonkin with the shiny metallic armor of steel or dark aluminum with a chrome trim. And then probably like aluminium colored skin with maybe I'll put a wash on it, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe just a gray wash, just to try to highlight some of the scale patterns. But this one's going to look, this one's going to make this one look dull by comparison. It'll be so gleaming that you're going to wish I hadn't done it. And if you wish I hadn't done it before I do it, let me know. You could do that in chat, or you could send some messages and say, please don't do it, and I'll do something else instead. So these 4 are done, and I haven't broken them since they've been done, which is good. So I'm going to put them way over in another place there, where they're less likely to be knocked over. I'm going to be working on this one today. And the color palette for this is going to be really, it's just going to be dull, right? The main armor color is going to be dark gray, and the trim is going to be this really nice stonewall gray. And then the 2 bags, the 4 bags, the 2 bag colors are going to be this and this. And I'll use like a dark aluminum for the belt buckles and the little clasps on the bags, and then the speed paint color will be Gravelord Gray. So this, compared to the others, this is not going to be very colorful, but you know, that's the next color of the dragonkin, so that is what it will be. Let's see how I do. So far I've been able to get through 4 of them. You know, they look okay. And I'll be using the same color pattern. I'll just show it to you here because it really shows up on the red and the pink. Is, you know, the armor is a certain color, and then all the trim around the edges of the armor pieces done in a lighter color. Yeah, and that's how they end up looking. They're all on the same team, I guess, because they're wearing the same pattern of uniforms. Let's see, this one has one of those collars up here around its neck. Yeah, a couple of these have that. And I'll find some color. Maybe I'll paint it like NATO black or something, just a dark color, to get that done. Let's see, flip. I can flip the piece of tissue. I want to flip this. This is a piece of a paint stir stick, not these paints, obviously. That would be a little bit large for that, but like when you get a gallon of paint, there's these stir sticks that you get free. And this is an old one because you can see it's from a store that you can't go to anymore. So I'll just flip this a couple times. There we go. Yep, just keep doing that. And yep, there was a bunch of flips. Yep. Yep, you're welcome. Sears says you're welcome. Yeah, that's right. They used to send at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, a paper catalog. It was like an 1.5 inches thick. Everything was in it, and you could mail order. Back in the day when mail order was mail order. Back in the day, we used to get a paper catalog because there wasn't any internet and there weren't any computers. And you couldn't really put it on your TV. You couldn't scroll through your television. That was as close as a computer monitor as you could get then. And so you got a paper catalog that showed pictures of everything with little descriptions and prices. And But yeah, it was always exciting to get the Sears catalog. I guess at some point, really early on, you could buy houses through the Sears catalog. They were sort of close to being prefabbed, designed houses. All you had to do was get a foundation, and they'd ship you all the pieces that you needed for a house. Big pieces of furniture, just everything, and it would be shipped right to your door. Very modern, right? The mail order catalog. That is not a modern invention by any means. Well, enough of that. Let's see if I can get the paint stirred up enough to actually get some painting done. This is whose favorite part. Let's see if I can get it going. There we go. That's pretty good, isn't it? I know, I did that especially for you. I can do this so that there's hardly any effect. But if I get the frequency just right, I can make it really ripple. But how many hundreds of times have I said we need to get this adjusted so that it holds the rotation? Okay, I'm going to use this brush because it's got, kind of a point on it, a nice angled brush. It's getting broader, but I can use this to paint the base coat fairly quickly, I hope, without too much of a mess on the main armor pieces. Okay. There is all of that, and there's a lot of it, so that takes a while. And then we let that dry and go with a lighter color to paint all of the trim. And those of you who have witnessed the other 4 dragonkin know that sometimes that goes really quite well, and I get the lines just right. But frequently, it doesn't. And the brush slips, or it touches the wrong spot, or I can't reach something, and then there's a mess. So we know that at some point it's a possibility of horrible disappointment, just terrible disappointment happening because of because the painting didn't go well. Just starting to get down there. I think I'm going to have to, as the paint in these jars gets down near the bottom, it starts to, the solvent evaporates and it becomes thicker. With that, it's only 10:15, and I'm already applying paint. Such a deal. It's almost like there's some relaxing painting going on with Dice and Dungeons today. We'll have to see if we maybe can stop that from happening later on. That is. Dogs, not cats. Those of you who have been watching this have also noted that I'm really quite slow at this. I might prefer to say I am deliberate, careful, or some word other than I'm just slow, but not that I am slow as a person, it's just that I am not the most skilled painter in the world. Need to move deliberately and carefully. There's just a lot of makeup work. Not making up like in I'm sorry I said that, let's make up, or makeup as in the cosmetics that one applies to your face. Some people do that. Yes. Rework might be a better way of describing what needs to be done with some frequency. if I don't work slowly. This is one of those where it's got hard to reach spots. So this is the base color of the armor, and then the trim on the edges and things is going to be a much lighter gray. So this is going to be, this one is going to be pretty dark. The green one was pretty dark. Dark in terms of shading, not dark necessarily in terms of its backstory or its character. What I'm trying to do with some care here is get the paint up to the edges, but not over them. You get the paint that has built up on the brush. Yeah, take that off so that the brush is not just a blob of mostly dried paint. And I like when we paint dungeon tiles, we almost always use up what's in the bottle cap so as not to waste paint. But in painting these, that starts to set up or dry really quite quickly and then gets too gummy to use. And then it just sits in there and it dries, and then it, causes a problem later. This is recorded. I haven't thought of this, but what the editors probably can do if they wanted to is, when this is streamed later, like on YouTube or something, is they could stream it at, say, 135% of its original speed kind of thing, and it would look like I was just painting at a normal pace. Yeah, things would just move along a little more quickly than they are as you're watching it here. Deliberate pace. So this would be a good time to go on a rant about something, I think. It has been kind of a regular feature of relaxing painting with dice and dungeons, as I could go on something. Who had me going on UEdit? I had a lot of fun, with that. Where somebody got some sort of old legacy video editing program that came on a CD or a DVD. Maybe it was even a CD. It might have been pretty old, and had to figure out how to use it because they weren't familiar with any of the technology because it was just too ancient, like 6 years old or something. Yeah, it was kind of fun doing that. Get off on all sorts of irrelevant tangents and things, and got to go to a retail store and buy DVDs of movies, and that was a huge novelty. So it was kind of fun doing that. Unfortunately, I did it already, so I can't redo it. You know, if you want to experience it, you need to catch that episode on YouTube. It was, I'm not sure when it was. It was in the past. Sometime in the past, I did that. Just putting dark gray paint all over dragonkin thing. Not talking about anything at all in particular. It's pretty boring today. Sorry. I should try to make your Friday a little bit more entertaining. Can talk about Super Train. I could talk about there's I could it's not only Super Train, but there's this other train TV series thing streaming. I'm not sure if it was TV or where it came from, but it was about a train that was going through the frozen expanse of a frozen earth. For some reason, everything got like cold. I think that's been done in a movie too, right? Everything's derivative. Probably some sort of Shakespeare play was similar, because Shakespeare did everything and nothing Shakespeare did was original. So everything's been done before. So you're thinking about, Snowpiercer, that's the one. Yeah, that made no sense at all. At least Super Train kind of made sense. You know, it's kind of like, oh, well, you can have a cruise ship, and that's kind of a blast and all of that. So let's just make a long, narrow, I don't have any trains. A train set. I don't. I have, I do have some really cool models, though. I could talk about those. So as you know, there's Sub Wednesday, Subwed. Now we're calling it that it's military nomenclature. We're calling it Subwed. Where I'm working on the 1960s vintage Renwall cutaway Polaris launching submarine. And I'm working with original kits, the ones that were produced in the 1960s. Just like the one I built when I was in like 7th or 8th grade. And, if you've been watching that, you've been seeing all the trials and tribulations that go with it, because on one hand, the model is incredibly detailed. All sorts of like clock faces on the wall that are the size of a pinhead. I mean, they are literally the size of a pinhead. And not literally, but literally in the literal sense of literally. But also very badly manufactured, so that none of the parts fit. And there's some major fabrication work that's going to have to be happening really quite soon to make the control room of the submarine work at all. So when I retired, which was now quite some time ago, I thought I would be bored and not have anything to do. And so to keep myself kind of active, I thought, well, let's relive my childhood and build models, because that's what I did. You know, we had a pretty large family in a pretty small house. And so, you know, to get away, I went down to the basement on the workbench and built models. And so when I retired, I thought, well, I'll do that again. And in fact, I even got some books about how to build models, because when I was a kid, you know, the way you build a model is you get the kit and you get yourself a tube of cement, not the liquid kind, but the kind that's really gooey. I don't know if you've ever worked with that or not, but if you haven't, you have to imagine this really viscous material that comes out of a little tube, like a miniature toothpaste tube, okay? And it immediately starts to kind of set up, and it forms these like spider web strings all over the place. Anyway, you're supposed to get that into the seams of the model. So, you know, when you're a kid, you get a model and you don't have any paints really, and you got one brush, and the model is printed in the color gray anyway, right? So it's like, it's the color it's going to be. So you just glue the thing together. And so one could build an entire model in just an afternoon, unlike taking 4 hours to paint 2 small bulkheads or a set of bunks or something, which is what's been happening with the submarine. So yes, I bought all these models. Some of them are vintage models like the submarine is. Some of them are reproductions of vintages. Some of them are just, you know, new models of things that I like. Like, the airplane models are all 1/48 scale. Okay, a lot of stuff is 1/72, but that tends to be kind of small. So I like the 1/48, and you can get almost everything in a 1/48 scale if you look around. They're really excellent model makers, not just in the U.S., but like in Italy and Japan. So I've got some of the big ones you can't get in 1/48 scale though. Like I can't get a B36. If you don't know what that is, look it up. You'll get all sorts of weird stuff if you just type in B36. But you could also type in B36 Peacemaker or B36 airplane model, or just if you want to see what one is like. So I can digress on that. I can digress on that for a while. Anyway, it's so large you cannot get one in 1/48 scale. I've been looking and looking. There might be one somewhere, but I haven't been able to find it. The same is true of some other large planes like a B-52, but the B-36 is huge. This gigantic plane, and it was built in the 1950s to carry the first thermonuclear weapons, H-bombs. And the H-bombs were kind of like the size of a bus. Okay? They're not like the ones now where you can put a dozen of them on the nose of a Minuteman missile. Okay? These were not miniaturized. They were humongous things. And they needed this. I think it could carry 2 of them. And they were mostly stationed in the far north in Alaska, and I think Canada even allowed some bases, but a lot of them were in Alaska because they didn't have aerial refueling then, and they needed to fly all the way to what was then the Soviet Union to drop their gigantic bombs, which are, you know... Anyway, these things were just gigantic. They were propeller driven. This was before jet engines were large enough and reliable enough to drive these things. And they had 6 pusher propellers. The propellers were in the back, not the front. Okay, which kind of makes sense. So these had pusher propellers. There were 6 of them, 3 on each wing. And that turned out to be underpowered. And so in slightly later versions, they added 4 jet engines. They were way on the outboard wings, way on the outside edges of the wings. They would put 2 jet engines in a pod on each wing. Okay. And those were mainly used for takeoff, because this thing weighed a huge amount of, it was very, very heavy and very large. And so they'd rev up these jet engines, which burned a lot of fuel. They were quite inefficient. So it's 6 propellers and 4 jet engines in order to deliver 2 bus-sized thermonuclear weapons to their targets. And that was called, you love this, the official name for it was the Peacemaker. So if you look up a B-36 bomber Peacemaker, you'll see what one of these looked like. They had there were a lot of distinctive things about it besides it being really big. It was incredibly complicated. These engines, the propeller engines, were piston engines. Okay, they weren't turbines like a lot of propellers are now. They were piston engines, radial piston engines, and they were so complicated that there was this, like, I don't know how many steps, I'll just make up a number, but there were maybe like 35 or 40 steps that had to be followed in order to get these things to start correctly. And there were just as many steps to shut them down. And if you didn't shut them down correctly, they wouldn't restart. And so that was a frequent problem with these planes, is that these incredibly complicated piston engines were, let's just say, unreliable, in that you couldn't always count on them starting when you wanted to go. And even if you shut them down correctly, sometimes they wouldn't restart. So there was a lot of switching out of engines. And then these things, because they needed to be close to their targets, they were stationed way up north. It was quite cold, and of course, when an engine is cold, the oil is viscous and maybe even almost frozen, so the pistons would kind of be stuck in their oil. Anyway, it was a huge maintenance nightmare to keep these things even flying. I mean, it was kind of a marvel. And they didn't stay in service very long. Not because they were just complicated and expensive to run and unreliable, and that they didn't stay in service very long because the bombs got smaller. Okay, and as the bombs got smaller, they didn't need this gigantic, complicated plane to carry them. And so then you got like the B-47 came, which wasn't really long range, but then the B-52 came along, which was powered by 8 jet engines. They put 8 engines on this thing because the jets back then weren't all that powerful. And even then, when it was loaded, it needed rocket-assisted takeoff. They strapped these solid fuel rocket pods to the sides of the jet. They would fire and get it off into the air. They built some of the longest runways ever, like 2-mile-long runways, to be able to get these things to take off. they're still flying. There are still B-52s flying in active service. I think they're pushing like 70 years old, seriously, and they're still using them. They've had engine upgrades. They still have 8 engines, but they're using much more efficient and powerful turbofans now instead of the jets that they had then. But that's kind of bad. Anyway, that's the story of the B-36, and I got off onto that because I do 1/48 scale models, and I couldn't get one of those, so I had to talk about it. Why not? I had to talk about something while I was putting gray paint all over this thing. Okay, so this is going to dry for a little while, and then I'm going to use this. Okay, that was an example of just not being careful, knocking things over. Put this on the stand to hold it when I do the next steps. And the next steps involve a little bitty brush painting linear detail like on the other dragonkin, using this and this light gray paint. So yeah, when I retired, it's always important to have these, just digressions because it fills the time. I need to let this dry a little while, just a little bit before I start painting with the light gray. So this B-36 was really pretty, had really interesting features besides being huge. Besides having lots of engines, many of which didn't work. Besides carrying bombs that were the size of buses. Besides being called a peacemaker, which, I guess irony was a thing back in the 50s. No, I think that was serious. They really meant that. This thing carried thermonuclear H-bombs, right? That would keep the peace, and it did. At least so far. So besides that, it had pressurized cabins for all of the crew because it flew quite high. Hi, Ovala. Yeah, I'll do a flip again. That'll be a good way to use some time. But it flew as high as it could because it wanted to be out of reach of anti-aircraft fire. But also because if it dropped its thermonuclear weapons, it wanted to be as far away from them when they exploded as possible. So, so it had these pressurized cabins in the front, the forward part where the bombardier and navigators and pilots were, but also in the back where they had some other crew people. And there was a tunnel between the two, a pressurized tunnel with a little cart on it. And this is a serious thing. If you ever see one or see pictures of one, they think they actually flew them in a movie, Strategic Air Command. I think Strategic Air Command was a movie where they actually showed these things flying, and they showed kind of the inside of it. If you wanted to go from one end of the plane to the other, from front to back or vice versa, you would get on this cart and lay down on it, kind of like a luge kind of thing, and you'd shoot through this tunnel. And the tunnel was pressurized, just like the fore and aft cabins were. And that's how you got from one end to the other. Because in the middle were the bomb bays where they had these bus-side bombs, and you couldn't walk through there. Anyway, that's another feature of that, other than the model being too big to be a 1/48 scale. So anyway, when I retired, I bought a huge number of models, thinking I would be spending virtually all of my time, I'm looking around at some now, virtually all of my time doing that kind of thing, because I would have nothing else to do. And of course, up until just a couple of months ago, I didn't ever work on them. Now I'm using Wednesdays. I have permission to build models on Wednesdays. So most of these are airplanes. A lot of them are propeller things, like two, but I also have a SR-71 Blackbird, which is hard to find in 1/48 scale. It's really big. An X-15, which is virtually impossible to find in 1/48 scale. That's an amazing thing. We did things in the 50s and 60s, that set records for flight. Highly experimental stuff, not just going to the moon, that nobody can do anymore because, that's when that stuff happened. I bought a couple of cars. One was the Lotus Ford, which was the first rear-engine car to Indianapolis 500. That's cool. Doing a flip for a follow. He keeps landing Sears side down. Oh, now it's gone. This doesn't bode well for painting the trim on the armor here. If I can't even keep the flip on the board here. There we go. So one of them. Well, I'm not sure. If I ever finish the submarine, I'm not sure what I'll do next. And I tried to do the X-15. I've got this really cool model of the Apollo. It's the service module and the container where the LEM, the Lunar Excursion Module, was contained, as well as the capsule and the escape tower. And it unfolds so you can see the LEM inside. It's a really cool model. That might be fun to build. I'm just looking at them here to see what I might do next. I've got a PBY Catalina, a 1957 fuel-injected Corvette, the best Corvette made. Single headlight, rounded tail, gorgeous. Best one until they came out with the split-window Stingray. That was pretty cool. The new ones are neat, though. They're mid-engine, so they're almost like European cars. I have a wooden model. Actually, this is one of the first ones I bought after I retired. And it is a plank-by-plank reconstruction of the America, the yacht that won the first America's Cup. And it looks absolutely gorgeous. I think if I could build that, that would be really neat. But I might do something simpler. Oh, yeah. I've got a couple of really old kind of balsa wood models. Lario and the Wright Flyer. This might be cool. And if you like the cutaway stuff, like the submarine I've been working on, if you like that kind of thing, I have a cutaway B-29, which is really pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, what I'm doing is I'm having some coffee so I can kind of wake up. There's a downside to waking up that I've spoken of in the past. Which is, now I'm awake. Okay, so this armor color is also used on bits of the sword, the pommel, and the guard. And I'll probably paint those. I'll probably just do those later. I need to do the hilt first and a little bit of decorative bit on either side in the lighter color that I use for the highlighting. And then I'll paint the rest of it, the pommel and the handle later, the guard later. Anyway, I got to talk about why I've got all these other models that are not Dyson Dungeon related. You know, they're not minifigs and they're not dungeon tiles. And I've been as I said many, many times before, one Wednesday I didn't have any dungeon tiles or minifigs to work on, so I said, well, just work on one of your role models. You know, at least you can do that, and that'll be fun for you. So I built a Fink, a Big Daddy Roth Fink model. And when I was a kid, I had all of them, all of the originals, and I did an excellent job painting those, if I do say so myself. And my mom hated them, and so threw them all away. But then when I started buying models, I thought, well, if I'm going to start building models, let me relive that too. So I've got like 8 of them. And I built one. And I think it came out really well, but people who watch this stream didn't really like the Finks. So I didn't start another one. I started the submarine instead. And the submarine has turned out to be like almost 10 times, an order of magnitude more challenging than I expected it would be. I'm giving this a lot of stirring because this is a paint that has not been used. And so it needs to be mixed well. Pigments settle out. And while I'm mixing that, I'm not painting with it, so there's that advantage too. Okay, this is the part on each one of these, and it's a universal thing, is that I get some of the lines to look really good, and some of the lines are just terrible, and sometimes I just put the paint where I don't need it or want it. And yeah, it's that kind of thing. I also need to wear my head magnifier, which is I use the 2X, which has fallen off. If I can get the focus right, which sometimes takes a little while, if I can get the focus right, allows me to actually see what I'm painting in enough detail that if I can get the brush there, it has a chance of being applied correctly. Okay, that's kind of a nice color. You know, that'll do. Let's see how this looks with it. Yeah. And who is supposed to say, but your head isn't any bigger? Even though the box says that, yeah. I did, that's what, see, I bumped that. That's how the sword blade of the green one got broken. Is I bumped it like that. It fell over, the sword blade hit, popped off, and disappeared. So somewhere in the land of lost socks, or wherever those things go, is a blade of the sword that I ended up making out of a toothpick later. Okay. So I need to paint this all around the edges of these things. I need to stay on camera. I need to see what I'm doing. This takes forever. This is going to take forever, or feel like it, because I need to do it really quite slowly. Because, you know, I am old and only moderately skilled. And I think that color combination is going to look okay anyway. fall silent as I paint tiny little stripes of highlight color on this and make it too thick. I'm going to need to just do that periodically because the paint is it's drying on the tip of the brush, and then it gums up the point of the brush, and then it's not very usable. Okay, came out mostly okay. This part's a little trickier, painting the stripe down the center. The tricky part is getting it down the center, because it's a little wiggly, but it's adequate. Usually this one, the same one on every single one, goes a little bit too far over to the side, and then I need to take the darker paint and just sort of open that up a little bit. It's been the same thing on every single one. It's pretty amazing. Got to talk about the B36 Peacemaker. Oh, that was okay. What that came from, and I've had that issue before too, is just not coming at it from the right direction. It is bringing the brush in from the wrong direction, and it goes further into the dark colored. That's going to be some major touching up, because none of that is right. Yeah, that's the give and take of this detail painting, at least for me, is getting it, kind of mostly where you want it, but having a fair amount of not where you want it, so you touch up the other color. I mean, I have to come back with the dark gray to do touch up on this, and then in a few spots that goes a little too far. I have to bring back the light gray, and the hope is to not have too much of a paint buildup so that you just end up with a blob. Okay, but that one just didn't go very well. And in doing this is now the 5th one I'm working on. You'd think by now I'd have it nailed, but pretty much what happens is that I keep repeating the same issues that I did before. Like that same spot on 3 out of 4 has been an issue. There, on like 2 of the 4 has been an issue. So it's like I've rehearsed this and practiced it so that I have the same problem each time I do it. Ugh. Okay, the point of I pushed down a little too hard. Right there. Just a little too much pressure on the brush, and the points of the bristles opened up, and it just splotched. So most of this touch-up will end up being just tiny dots of dark gray paint. Dots will just even out or like make smaller like that. Okay. It's just not quite even. Put dark gray there to make it a little bit narrower. Sometimes there's spots where the line isn't quite, you know, and I'm not going for perfection here. I'm going for adequacy, because these things, if they show up at all on the stream, like if these minifigs, if we actually use these on our Dice and Dungeons stream, you're not going to be really close enough to see the flaws. I am wearing my head magnifiers. I can definitely see them. Yeah. I was saying, like, one of the first models I bought, maybe someday I'll be brave enough to try it, is this plank by plank wood model of the America yacht, one that won the first America's Cup. It's an absolutely beautiful boat. It has nothing at all to do with, I mean, it's a boat. A sailing yacht. It has, other than that, it goes on the water and it has a sail. Really, I can't, just nothing was just not held in the right direction here. So I couldn't hold the brush steady. I got paint everywhere here. Just that was just a little episode of slight shakiness. Steady, but the hand is not braced quite right. And yeah, another opportunity for improvement. If you messed up, fix it. It's like, oh, it's an opportunity for improvement. No kidding. One good thing is that the dark gray paint will cover pretty well. So when I do the touching up, yeah, I think if I get it closer to the camera, I can make my head look bigger, and then the head magnifier label actually turns out to be true. And if you think I'm kidding about that, I'm not. The box actually calls it a head magnifier, and I might show it to you just so that you know I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up every time I use it. So I guess, you know, it's important to have like recurring themes in a stream like this, right? You can't have a stream without telling the same joke at least once. That kind of thing. Or not, I don't know. It seems like there are certain things that need to be said every time. You can't, there are some things you just can't make a reference to them without always adding an adjective or saying it the same way or something each time. Hard to reach. Spot that needs touching up there. Yeah, there was this tiny little spot I wanted to get to. And, yeah, I had messed it up on both sides. I should have just left it alone because it was the kind of thing you could barely see otherwise. So I'm going to have all sorts of touching up challenges on this one. Yeah, it'll be a good way to take more time than one would expect to get it done. Fix all the flaws that were created. Well, there's a couple of ones that I did when I was doing the trim like this. I think I was doing like a B level. Today I'm doing like a C+. They're not big, but there's just a lot of spots like that. I'm just by a little bit, just missing the mark. Getting the brush wrong or the angle wrong. Just maybe my hand just isn't. It is actually true. My hand is not that steady today. And I think it's just the way I'm holding things. Sometimes if you get a little pressure on your hand, it shakes a little bit. I think I'm holding things like too tight or something. But that gives me an opportunity to pull out the dark gray paint again and spend a lot of time doing touch-ups. Maybe I can even use the opportunity. I don't want that there. See, the problem with that little blot that I just stuck there is that the speed paint that I use later to paint the, what I need is a toothpick. Speed paint that I use later is sort of translucent, and because of that, if there's a lighter spot, like that is a lighter spot, go as a flaw. I'm going to try to get that off there. I have to do a whole lot of touching later. Sometimes when it comes time to do the touch-up, actually doing the touch-up, is that there isn't as much of it as it looked like there was initially. Okay. And maybe that'll be the case today, is that It won't be quite as much touch-up as it looks like there is going to be at the moment, because it looks like there's a lot. Yeah, it's just really messy. This is becoming a messy day. Okay, now we've got, the edges of the triangle here. You might have noticed I'm kind of a unidirectional painter. Okay. The bag gets painted later. There. To paint down the center here. Let's get a little bit wider on the top and then come down to sort of a point near the bottom. Touching up just to even out the edge on the left. Not too bad. And then I do this kind of wide, this yoke along the top here. Too big, I think. Very asymmetric. Figure out what to do about that. This particular bit might require several passes, several attempts at touching up, because they're not the same on either side. Okay. Clean this off again just a bit. And then I'm just going to rotate this to make sure that I've got at least an effort. That need to be this lighter gray. Before I get the darker gray out to do the touching up all. And everything looks pretty ragged with the 2x head magnifiers, but when you look at it from a distance later or during the stream, it's not going to be too bad. Okay. May as well do these two. There's a little point here. Side of the sword that's painted this lighter color. And then most of the hilt, other than the pommel, is also painted this. Yeah, that's the pattern I've been using. Painting the toothpick pommel here. Fabricated on Monday to replace the one that never got printed. And this particular one was a printing flaw. And this bit, the pommel, didn't get printed. So I fabricated a new one. Unlike the green one where there was a pommel and a sword blade. And I managed to break them both off. In this particular case, it wasn't my fault. So instead of just fabricating what I thought would be one pommel, I ended up fabricating two pommels and a blade. And again, they're not perfect, but, you know, like a prop on a movie or something. It's just, it's not so much the detail that's important, it's how they actually appear. So if these guys show up on our stream, and they might, you never know. I can just see that. You know, these are dragonkin. They take themselves very seriously. They consider themselves, and they are, fairly powerful things. They're going to show up. In Nines, they'll say something really helpful like, "Hey, you guys the Power Rangers? You look like the Power Rangers with all the different colors." Nines doesn't talk exactly like that. I can never get Nines' voice down right, but, you know, that's the kind of thing that would happen. And even though they might have started out with the intention of being friendly, they would be horribly insulted. And, yeah, it wouldn't be good because, you know, they don't know what Power Rangers are, but they know it's not a good thing, so then they'll be upset. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's mostly done. It just needs a lot of touching up. Let that dry for a bit. maybe what I will do is maybe I'll paint the bags, the belt and the bags, because those also border the dark gray, and if those slip over anywhere, then I need to touch those up as well. So I've got 2 other colors of gray, so I'm just going to use them. Yep, everyone has a different Nines voice. Even Nines has a different Nines voice. No, Nines does Nines voice pretty well. Right, this is the color I'm using for the front of the belt and the larger of the bags. It's not going to, it'll be almost indistinguishable probably from the trim color, but like I said, I've only got so many grays. It's a little darker than the trim color. I think I'm wandering off camera just a little bit. It's always these spots that you can just barely see. You know, just... You barely see them, but you know they're there. And they're also hard to reach. Here, it gets painted metallic a little bit later. There's 2 other bags. Those are smaller bags. Those are going to be painted almost black. Kind of be extremely dark gray, close to black. It's also been kind of the color pattern that I've been using, is that the smaller inner bags are darker. And since they're on the same team, you know, they try, even though they each a different color, they try to stay coordinated in terms of the pattern of the colors and kind of thing. That's all part of their that's their story. That's the story. Okay, well, there, that's good enough. Well, it is darker than the trim by quite a lot, so yeah, it's working out okay. So clean up the brush here. with these, I haven't been really making any effort to a lot of shading or anything like that. I've done a little bit, like on the tips of the spikes, that kind of thing. So they're, Ms. Oldbrogger has said, somebody who kind of follows along, they look almost cartoonish. I took that as, you know, as not an insult. I mean, they kind of do look cartoonish in that they are just, you know, not a lot of shading and blending and washing and things like that. You could tell this one's settled. There's a little ball bearing in there, and when I started to shake it, it didn't move at all because the pigment had settled so much. So this little bits of paint get painted on the small bags in the front and also the collar. The collar is really kind of hard to see, but it's there and it needs to be painted. And I'll do the bags first. It's this old NATO black, which is not, and it's not really black. It's a little gray and a little green in it. One of our dogs is protecting us from somebody walking along the street. He has become quite the watchdog. It apparently didn't detect a threat because it just got a couple of little whoops. When she really gets into protection mode, she's developed this almost hound-like bay kind of thing that you get from like a beagle or a hound. She did that a couple of days ago, got all excited about some trucks that were arriving to do some work on a house across the road from us. She got very upset by them because they were large and loud. You know, this paint is using it from the cap, and it's starting to gum up already. This paint has been thinned once. And it may need to be thinned again. Time like here. I can't even see the clock with these on. It looks like when I'm done painting this, I should let it dry and then come back and do the gray touch-up. ER. Never really paid attention to that show, ER. I can't talk about it. I'm guessing it was about an emergency room. Apparently it was supposed to have had cultural impact. I'm sorry, who? I can't go on about that show. Oh, yeah, see what happened there is it caught the side of the brush. And now there's a spot that needs touching up with the light gray. There's the side of the brush on it, and there's a spot. Sometimes the paint builds up right at the base there, and that's even a good spot for the paint because that's where it's likely to touch something rather than the very tip of it. You know, that's what you want the paint is on the tip of the paintbrush. In here too. Well, after I do the dark gray touch-up, it's pretty clear I'm going to have to come back and do some light gray touch-up as well. Largely because of the issues I'm having trying to paint this collar. I should have just painted this earlier because it's kind of hard to reach. And if I'd painted it earlier, I could have gotten paint all over the place and just covered it up later. It's the old side of the brush issue here. Too bad. There's a tiny bit. It's supposed to be a tiny bit here. Okay, well, that is what it is. And what it is just a little bit messy. But I can... Most of that is up here where I need to put the dark gray touch-up anyway. Fix that later. Okay, so... Yeah, okay, that's enough of that. It is great. This is good timing. It's time for a break. Super Chicken, yeah. Some more Super Chicken. I'm going to go on, I think I'll talk about Super Train and Snowpiercer after the break. We'll see if we can come back around to that. I got off into this, longer discussion about 1/48th scale model airplanes, and then, you know, those that were too big to be produced in that scale. And then other things that were related to that, like engines that didn't work and bus-sized thermonuclear weapons and things. But I never did get back to talking about what you suggested, which is to talk about Super Train and Snowpiercer. I'm going to do a compare and contrast. Compare and contrast on trains. But I'm just trying to get this paint off of here without harming the brush. All right, so let's summarize quickly before I take the break. I have base coated the armor and most of the trim, and what I need to do is come back now with the dark gray, the dark armor color, and do a fair amount of touching up. There's little touch-ups all over the place that need to be done to make it look even, you know, or symmetric, like in this case. I'll be putting the head magnifiers back on. After that, I'll be taking the light gray color back again, this one, the trim color, because there are like a spot there that I messed up when I was painting the collar, the dark blackish kind of thing. I will need to do tiny little bits of metallic on the buckles of the bags and the belt. Okay, and once those are done, then I will get the Grey Lord Gray speed paint out and speed paint all the dragon skin. Okay, and that's always an interesting kind of thing to do. And once that's done, okay, then I'll paint the blade of the sword and maybe do little touches of something, maybe a lighter gray or something on the spikes that are all over its face. Paint its toenails and then the base. So, yeah, coming back, it will be this color, this dark gray color, doing a whole lot of touch-up all over the place, and then some light gray touch-up, and then the body wash, the sword blade, and some other little detailing, maybe, depending on how that goes. So, thanks for watching so far. I'll be back with more relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons in... a while. In a while. No, it isn't break time. It's early for a break, but I'd like to take my break early. I'll be back a little bit after noon. Hi, Can't Account. Thank you for being a follower. I really appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying this. And oftentimes, this is really amazing. New followers come on just before break. And that's what you're doing. So, but I appreciate that. I will be back after taking a brief break. I'll be back around noon Eastern Daylight Time. And I'll be doing touching up and body washing. I will be starting at just past noon Eastern Daylight Time, so in about 25 minutes. But I actually really do need to take a break right now, so I'm going to do this a little bit earlier. So thank you for joining in chat and becoming a follower. I really appreciate it, and I think I'll be able to finish this guy up before 2 o'clock today, unless I run into some real problems, which sometimes I do. The problems I run into are the ones I create by making a mess of things. I'll take a break, and it's going to be a shorter one than usual, I hope. See you right around noon. There we go. And I got bumped again. Definitely. One of these years, you know, just need to fix things. Everywhere. So yes, I'm going back to doing touch up with this dark gray paint on all the spots that need touching up, and there are several. And then I am going to body wash the model, and then I don't know, maybe do a little bit of, you know, paint the sword and stuff. But I'm going to need to put my head magnifiers back on again. Shake up the paint. Okay, I'm going to put these on, turn on the light, and see how this comes out. Use a little bit of the paint from the bottle cap before it gets too gummy. I guess let's sort of start at the bottom. Work that way around until it's done. As with these darker colors, you're seeing it here. In the larger surfaces is that the paint kind of pulls away, and then you get spots. Now let's see what we can do about this. This is the same issue I've had 3 out of the 4 previous ones. This very same knee pad issue where the trim color I just have trouble with that with this knee pad. This paint is not behaving properly, which is unfortunate. I need to get a point right down in there. End up getting too much on the brush, and it would just cause a problem in the other direction. Oh. Hi, Seth. That's one of our cats. who likes to come down and make noise like that. Very loud cat. Basically what he wants is a treat. I'm trying to actually extinguish this meowing behavior because again, let's just say that well, that was a thing. Okay, you just saw there an example of not having things located in a good location. I stuck my finger right into the paint. We're supposed to be talking about trains, but instead I'm going silent as I attempt to get this paint, which seems it's a little too viscous. You know, it's just making it a little harder than it needs to. I need to thin it just the tiniest bit. So after I'm done here, I'm going to get the thinner out and put a couple of drops of thinner in it. As the paints get near the bottom of the bottle, it is quite common problem in that the solvent has kind of evaporated, leaving what's left thicker, more viscous, and less spreadable. Than I would like. So I'm working on the knee pads and the shin guards here. With the shoulder pads and the bits of the sword that I painted this color, the pommel and the guard. What we're aiming for here is for it to be adequate. You know, I'm aiming for, sometimes I can get an A level work, but oftentimes what I'm looking for is just a solid B. A little too high there. Let's see if I can make an even line. Speaking of grades, so think about grades at engineering school, right? These are the people who construct your roadways and your airplanes and stuff, or design them at least, set up the manufacturing processes and stuff. So B is just, it's like 90% correct, right? If you're doing B work, you're doing like 90%. And which means 10% is not right. And think about that. You're crossing a bridge. And that bridge was more likely than not designed by an engineer who gets it only 90% right. Get good solid B's in college, right? I never found that very comforting. Like, I want my bridges designed by people who are getting A+, who are 98s, right? Like 98% right. But if your bridge is designed by a C student, what does that mean? Offense to C student engineers out there, but it does make me worry sometimes. Just what do we got going? Yeah, so there's some spots here that need the lighter gray to come back, like up there. Little spots here and here. Not a lot, but just, you know, some. But what about that super train? I haven't seen it. Well, I can't say that. I've seen like about 5 minutes of it. Apparently there is somebody who had a lot of money and decided that, you know, people take luxury cruises and all of that. Why not have this big super luxury train? You know, and a train can go places a ship can't because, you know, it's on land and not on water, right? So there's totally different itineraries available to somebody who's on a super train as opposed to a ship. I began to wonder about things like, you know, how did super train manage to get the right of way to build this high-speed train? I mean, right now it has been like decades and decades, and this country can't pull that off. Some super train was able to. So I was told by who watched Super Train, is a Super Train fan, that it was because this person who was running Super Train was like really wealthy and just bought the stuff. And governments can't do that, right? They have to go through all sorts of permitting and this, that, and the other thing, and they can't get rights away for railroads. But, you know, if you're rich enough, you just buy people out and then put a railroad track through what used to be their yard. It seems fair. Anyway, so Super Train actually, you know, is something that could have been done. I'm not sure it's a terribly good idea. You know, do you have like swimming pools? You know, and gymnasiums. You could have a gymnasium. Swimming pools might be hard to pull off on a train. Especially if you try to do like one of these infinity pools. You know, you can see up over the edge. I'm not sure which edge you'd be seeing, but yeah, you could do that. But it would be hard to do. You could certainly serve good meals. You could, have sleeper cars and all of that. I'm not sure you could take really long trips. If it were sort of a high speed, if it were a really slow train, like a lot of cruises will go 7 or 10 days even. High speed train, you could cross the country, even the US, back and forth like a couple of times in that amount of time. So the timing of it, I'm not sure how that would work, but anyway, yeah, you could do a super train, and you could turn it into a super luxury kind of way of getting from one part of the country to another, or maybe even just you could take a long trip. You could start out, I don't know, somewhere. Let's say you started out on the East Coast, because why not start there, right? And you could travel the northern Midwest, come down through Oregon, Washington State, and California, and even go up through the center, visit Denver. Suppose you could take like a 2-week train trip by just traveling all over the place and visiting all sorts of cities. I don't know if you'd want to get off the train. Maybe you would. Maybe you wouldn't, because you really like the stuff on the train. But it might stop like cruises do at different points in different places. So that kind of makes sense. I think it'd be really hard to pull off in this country now, given that all the tracks really are owned, except for a few corridors, some high-speed corridors on the East Coast that are owned by Amtrak. Most of the tracks are owned by freight companies. And actually, because the freight companies own them, if they're moving something from one place to another, whoever owns the tracks has the right of way. So they might actually make like a passenger train go off to the side while the freight train lumbers by, because it's our tracks. What are you going to do about it, huh? But apparently Supertrain, was able to had enough money, and if they didn't exactly buy ownership of the tracks, at least bought right away, so that their train could have priority over a freight train. Might be like we had the opportunity once to take a Panama Canal cruise. That was really cool. And the cruise ship had priority getting into the canal, and all these lazy river equivalent. People like lazy rivers. Wouldn't even need the equivalent. You could just do that. You could just have like this little stream of water. You get from one place to the other. You get an inner tube. What was I doing? I was painting the guards here. Yeah, a slow train isn't a super train. It has to be a fast train. But yeah, if if you had the scheduling right in the right of way, you could do a pretty cool tour of Americas. You could maybe, if you could get the gauge right on the train and the right of ways and everything, you could do like that was wrong. I don't know what I was thinking there. I have to fix that. I put the wrong color on. The light gray is really close to the color of the primer. What I meant to do was just paint the pump. But no, I intentionally put a blot of paint on a spot where it shouldn't have gone. I guess I got distracted by thinking about trains and going. But yeah, if you could get, if the gauge was consistent and you had the right of ways, you could do like a hugely long train trip, cover North America, South America, Central America, just go everywhere. It'd be kind of cool. So the super train idea isn't all that bad. If you could get it, you'd have this big luxury train that would be your mode of transport. It'd be like the equivalent of a river cruise, right? Where you spend maybe a week or so on a cruise ship of some sort, just visiting a whole bunch of different cities. You could do that with the super train. That would be kind of neat. Especially if it were, a pretty smooth ride and you could go from car to car without being jostled all over the place. The problem with the train is that it's pretty narrow, so you're kind of limited to doing things in a tubular fashion, kind of. The X-Acto knife there. There's a little bit of paint that formed a thread where it just connected one bit to the other. I don't think you can really see it, but right here in the back. These spots of paint are going to show through later. So anyway, I want to put that down there where it's in the way, and I'll probably cut my finger if I'm not careful. I'm kind of, I guess Super Train never really caught on as either a show or as a transportation option. It's a little bit sad, I guess, because I think that'd be a cool way to travel. Especially if it went, like I said, like a big cross-country, maybe even international kind of travel cruise ships. I could actually be tempted to do that. But the Snowpiercer, I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. I saw little bits of it and was like, nah, this is wrong. It just doesn't make sense. Apparently the world got really cold and it got covered with snow and everything like that. And a whole bunch of people were getting on this train as a refuge. So instead of like burrowing underground and building cities underground or just, burning fossil fuels and increasing the temperature of the world by heating their homes or something, their place of refuge was this train. And somehow this train was able to travel through all of this ice and snow on tracks without hardly ever getting bogged down because of drifts over the tracks, that kind of thing. And why was it moving? Why were you on this train that's moving around? As opposed to you just burrow in somewhere, right? Get yourself a good supply of fossil fuels and heat wherever you are, and live through this apocalyptic winter. But no, they got on this train. And I just, just touched little touch right there. As I was touching one spot, I touched another, and this up here is just not ever going to work. I have no idea why that's such a problem. And this got too big too. Just having a lot of problems with touching up this color. I'm going to have to come back with the dark gray again just to touch up little spots that I was touching up and touched too far. Maybe it was my distress dealing with Snowpiercer, and just how that did not make any sense at all. So yeah, so to deal with the apocalyptic winter, everybody gets on this train, and of course they've got like multiple classes of people on the train. There's like first class where everybody has great food and drink and big rooms and everything else, and then there's back in steerage, which is essentially like a box car where everybody just slept on the floor and ate whatever mush was left over from the first or second class cabin that was kind of tossed their way. And then, you're going to have rebellions and class warfare, political intrigue and stuff to try to keep it kind of interesting. But the whole premise was just dumb. When did they build these tracks? Did they build them in the snow after the apocalypse? I don't know. To be honest, I really don't know. I just have to complain about the show. I just thought the idea was so dumb that, and they wanted to have all of this class warfare, and which is really cool and all of that, but why a train? And why cold? Why couldn't they just have it like in a city or a town or something? I don't know at all. I was baffled by Snowpiercer. Yeah, and what they were attempting, or what they thought they were trying to do that they just couldn't do because it was dumb. I was going to thin this, and then I didn't, so now that I'm opening it again, I'll try to remember to do that. So if anything, I think what happened was I was used to using and touching up with this dark gray paint, which is viscous, and then the light gray paint was much more fluid, and I didn't adapt the brushing technique and placement. Sad about this little spot here. These have just little stripes. Let's see if I can pull that off. And the ones that were printed correctly, it's a little raised spot. And these that are made out of a toothpick, it's just going to be a stripe. And not too terribly well done, but it'll do. Okay. Let's give it one more go, look around. These things are looking adequate now. I think they're looking, it'll do. So I'm going to get some metallic out and paint the buckle, the belt buckle, and the painted the same color as the sword blade. No, I'll get that later. The belt buckle and the little clasps on the bags. Yeah, class warfare is really, you know, why not? Just have, if you're going to be on a train, you might as well have class warfare. Speaking of class warfare, if you were to go onto YouTube and watch some of the early episodes, the early streams of Dice and Dungeons, our D&D campaign, you will actually have the opportunity to see some examples of how our group was able to foment class warfare as a way of dealing with some of the encounters, like battle encounters that we ran into. So yeah, we haven't done that in a long time, but it became actually a regular feature in some of our early combat, was to be able to use natural class divisions to recruit allies from among what would otherwise have been adversaries. So I'd strongly encourage you to go back and watch maybe like the first 10 or 15, or really early on when we were actually, half of our party was on a Zoom call. The quality of the production was not quite as good as it is now, because half of our party were on Zoom calls, and the other half was in what was then the early versions of our studio. And that's what it should be. But yeah, and you'll learn about one of our barrel chicken. Barrel chicken was the catalyst for one of our famous class war uprisings. And if you want to know what that's all about, the only way you'll find out is to go back and catch some of the early episodes of Dice and Dungeons, where that whole thing, where barrel chicken became a significant part of our campaign. I hope that's got your curiosity working, because we were speaking of class warfare, which we did do which we did use in our D&D campaign, and barrel chicken. So those of you who will know what barrel chicken is, you'll be very special people, because that was a very special part of our early D&D campaigns. It was pretty amazing. But yeah, anyway, Snowpiercer, I would say Snowpiercer was, I don't know, I mean, it lasted a lot longer, and I guess the production value, the budget certainly was higher than it was for Super Train. But conceptually, Super Train made a whole lot more sense than Snowpiercer did. I mean, you just, with Super Train, all you have to do is suspend your disbelief about whether anybody could get high-speed train right-of-ways in this country. Okay? And that's easier than trying to suspend your disbelief about why in the world would anybody be dealing with an apocalyptic winter on a train. Just never made any sense. Okay, now I need to find the right brush to brush this speed paint on, because I need to do it with enough care that it doesn't get all over everything else, because there's some pretty tiny nooks and crannies, but also with a brush that is broad enough to be able to get some of the larger areas. So I'm tempted to use this brush. I hope. I don't remember what I've used before. I hope it works. Yeah, how are we doing? It's almost not even one yet, so I think I should be able to finish this unless I have a disaster. Haven't used this particular speed paint before. There's like 2 different kinds of pigments in here. Speed paint, lighter pigment on the surface and a darker pigment that's supposed to seep into the nooks and crannies and crevices. It's kind of like a base coat and a wash built together. And I've been using it on all of these models, and it works kind of okay. It would work better if the surfaces were larger. Things are always smooth on relaxing painting. Nothing ever goes wrong. I will repeat at least once, maybe more than once on each stream, that this is definitely not a how-to show. Because I am not a skilled painter or a skilled model maker. And so when I'm doing painting like this, it's really pretty flat. I stay between the lines. I'm not really good at shading and highlighting and things like that. So oftentimes I don't even try. If you know you're not going to succeed, right? Why try if you know you're going to fail? That's a life lesson. Don't take that life lesson. That's not good. No, it's just that I just don't know how to do it. So it's not that I am not trying something. It's that I don't even know how to start trying to do some things like some of these shading techniques. So Nick, you'll come down and look at these models and say, it would look good on this. And I'd say, yeah, what? And she'd say, oh, well, why don't you do some dry brushing of the highlight right across here? And I would say, well, that really would look good, but can't do dry brushing. Well, yeah, you just get a little bit of paint on your brush and it's almost dry. That's why it's called dry brushing. And I go, yeah, I know that, but I don't know how to do it. it just doesn't work. I end up with wet brushing, and then there's blobs of paint, not just shading paint. Suppose, you know, if I spent a long time at it, I suppose I could, you know, develop the techniques, but I'm not even sure about that, because let's just say that eyesight and steadiness of hand are not, they don't match up very well with that of Nicole, who is actually a trained artist. Thing for her is just do it like this. It's like, oh yeah, I could just do it. I can't do it like that. I don't know how. It doesn't always work. So anyway, yeah, there's that. So so I've developed sort of this style of painting. Actually, I did this ages ago when we did when Warhammer first started. And I mean not just like a year or two ago when Warhammer was a new thing. We discovered it, and we got this Warhammer set that had 3 different races in it. There were elves, there were orcs and goblins, and there were lizard men. Took the orcs and goblins, and our son Alex took the elves, and Nicole did the lizard people. And you know, I was accused of, you make your orcs and goblins look way too clean. They should all be all muddy and everything. I said, no, it's a stereotype. So I've actually, ever since I've been painting what was then really early minifigs, you know, the Warhammer minifigs, I've been doing them the same way, which is kind of like these here. It wasn't just a whole lot of shading and texturing and stuff on them. And I think, you know, it's, if you were doing a display model kind of thing, this wouldn't cut it. It just wouldn't. But if you're doing whatever, essentially props for a stream, it actually turns out okay. Because a lot of that, sometimes all that shading and things just make things look dark. You know, you can't really see what it is when you're looking at something. The camera, that's a distance away. Looks like I got a little touching up I need to do with the light gray there. Wait, just trying to get a little bit more texture on here, and so I have a lot of touching up to do with the light gray on the knee pads, but also over here where I just almost like deliberately made a mess of it. Total carelessness. So yeah, this is me painting minifigs, and when we have them, dungeon tiles for our D&D campaign. That's how this all started, actually, is that we printed out dungeon tiles and little scatter pieces, you know, little extra stuff like tents and sleeping bags and, you know, the kind of stuff that an enemy camp or even friendly camp might have to be used on our stream. And that's what this is all about. That's how this started. And it was, okay, well, since you're doing it anyway, why don't we stream it? And it's a pretty low cost kind of thing. So that's relaxing painting got started. So I think I consider myself more of a, when I'm doing stuff like this, I'm not doing display models. I'm painting props. And that's different sometimes. Sometimes you have to like exaggerate certain colors or reduce the amount of detail, things like that, so that the props, although by themselves they might look kind of scabby, like if you ever seen real Hollywood props in real movies, it's not the kind of thing that you would put in your, that you would use around your house, for example. They're missing detail and things, so the style of painting that I am capable of doing, actually I think works pretty well for the purpose for which it's done. Nicole has done some pretty amazing things. She did some animals and things that are just, they are display model kinds of things. They're that quality. They're really, really nice. And, they're okay. They're okay for what they are. Like this. So this is coming along all right, and the speed paint is working pretty well. I've got a couple of places where some significant touching up needs to be done because I'll just say the brush slipped. That's what happened. I slipped. To go back and put a little bit of the light gray paint down where it needs to be. But you can see how the speed paint works here on the hand, assuming I'm on camera here, is that the darker pigment kind of flows down into the crevices, and that then highlights the texture, in this case the fingers. You'll see back here how it picks up the scaly pattern, that exists. Hands. Okay, I need to do the head. That's a little bit of a challenge. There's lots of little spiky bits. I need to get it in there. And then down around the collar. It's a matter of making sure that all the surfaces painted, and then it's just a little challenging then up around the neck down here. Didn't paint the sword blade earlier because this is almost certain to get onto the sword blade.
I'm sure that's not showing up while I'm doing underneath the neck. Okay. I would say of the speed paints, this black is actually working about as well as any of them have. It's showing up, yeah, it's showing up the detail pretty well. I might not even have to do much highlighting if I do any at all on the head. Okay, and then let's not forget the tail. Okay, it's like, oh, I feel like I'm almost done. I know I'm missing something. Yeah, what's missing is this tail, which is a big area. That would be noticeable if I didn't paint that. Tail has nice, you know, some difficult to reach spots, but some nice scaly areas that hopefully the speed paint will pick up on. Getting underneath here. The tail is where I can kind of use this the way it was meant to be used, which is to be brushed on, you know, fairly heavily and quickly. That's why it's speed paint. It's not really why they call it speed paint, but sometimes the faster you go, actually, the better it looks. This is an area I actually missed on one of the models, is the inside of the tail here. I was so busy paying attention to the outside that I turned it around and I was like, oh, the whole inside of the tail isn't done. Okay, well, so that's an okay color, actually, the way it came out. There's enough contrast with the armor. It's picking up some of the texture. Got a piece of debris. It is not coming off. Let's see if I can get that off the brush. And what should be left is the sword blade and the base. Plus the touching up I have to do on some of the spots of the light gray where I got the speed paint on it. And just going around to make sure I didn't miss like the inside of a hand or under a shoulder or something. You know, a place where it would just be obviously a problem if it weren't painted. And I don't see, well, there's kind of one there. Okay, yeah, I need to get the light gray out. There's a number of spots that need to be touched up again. Touched and retouched and overtouched and untouched and things untouched. So, I think that was mostly on camera. Yeah, that's pretty good, if it was. This side, with the brushes here, where I can, if I reach them, I'll knock this over and break something. And once again, for the third time, getting out the light gray paint or touching up the trim. I can tell it's the third time because I've been putting it in this palette. Okay, and there's already two spots of that color. This is going to be the third drop of this light gray.
There we go. Hopefully the last. And then I will be using this color, duraluminum. They spell it it's from Spain, so it's spelled the European way. It's not duraluminum, it's duraluminium. So I suppose since I should call it the way it's spelled there, duraluminium. There it is. There's several spots where I got. There's another one. It was mainly down here, wasn't it? Checking to see if there are any other areas that need to be retouched. The whole thing is not too bad. I need to paint the sword blade. Oh, I almost forgot. I had to paint the toenails. It's always that. I've almost forgotten that on a couple of others. I'll just do that now while I'm thinking of it. This is the third time I've opened this, and this is the third time I said, I need to thin this paint. And the previous two times, I didn't. Because then I moved on to something else and I forgot to do it. It's really close to the body color, but might as well paint them because they'll contrast just a little bit. Just enough so you can see that they're there. Okay, now I'm remembering that I need to put some thinner in this paint. And the thinner's way over there to my left and quite a distance away, so I'm gonna have to reach over a bunch of stuff. And what I would usually do, okay, is I would set this here and then reach over it and knock it down and break something. But I'm planning ahead, knowing that that's a possibility, that that's a likelihood. And so I'm going to try my best to avoid doing that. I'm seeing some serious irregularity in the speed paint here, so I'm going to take just a moment to pull this brush out, this other little one, and do something about that. I think that would just be really obvious, even on the stream.
Get these little spines on its feet. They need to be painted that body color. I missed those. Well, that's going to be better. Okay, this is where I have to move this over here, way out of the way so I don't knock it over. Clean the brushes. Yeah, this up. And do what I said I was going to do, which is to get some of the thinner. And eyedropper. And there isn't too much paint left in the bottle. I don't want to over thin it, but it needs to be thinned in order to be usable. Hopefully that will be enough. Give that a stir. Okay. Actually, this gun chainmail silver that I've been using for the sword needs to have a little bit of thinner in it as well. So, because it's near the end of the bottle. The way this works is this little nozzle pulls off. Right? See that? It wasn't supposed to bring a lot of paint with it, but it did. Even though I used a paper towel to pull it off. That was one of those things that did not go smoothly at all. That was a definite yuck. That didn't go well. Moment on relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. At least the stuff washes off with water. So when I was young and I built models, we had the paints that you could get were Tester's enamels, and you had to use like isopropyl alcohol or denatured alcohol to clean anything. So if you got it in your hands like this, this would have become an alcohol bath. Well, that really splatted out a lot of paint. Not really sure how that happened. Well, because I hadn't stirred it up or anything, but it was all near the top. Yeah, lovely. All I wanted to do was put like 2 drops of thinner in here, because it was starting to get too thick, and actually there were spots there were moments when it was since I've got this much out, just put it in here. This is for the sword blade. Okay, well that was one of those things that happens on Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, when I was actually trying to be careful by not putting something where I would reach over the thinner and almost forget to cap it up and knock it over and make a puddle of it. And wow, yeah. It was good that I did that, because you have to have at least one moment like that on each stream of Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, and this was kind of a exemplary one. I mean, just in a major way. Made a mess. And most of it off. I want to get enough of it off so I don't get it all over the model if I happen to touch it. Ugh, wow. That was a thing. Okay, let's paint the sword blade with this paint that was misbehaving here. There. So sort of a decorative feature. Kind of the significant thing about this sword blade is that I haven't broken it off. Like I did with the green one. So that's a tradition I'm just fine with not continuing. When I'm done with this, that is to say, when I'm done with the sword blade, the thing to be done next is base. That's painted gray. It's the color. That's what I've been doing on all of them. So even though this whole thing is gray, it will be gray. I almost did one of those things that I sometimes do, which is bring the brush up to the surface, be very careful where I'm landing, but not very careful on the path, and I almost smashed that shoulder pad with shiny silver paint. Wasn't surprised that that didn't happen. Okay, there. I'm going to set that there and show it to you so that you can see what has been done. And I'm going to use the same brush. I believe I will use the same brush for the base because it worked okay. Okay, here. So this is the black dragonkin. And let me just grab one of the others so you can kind of see it. And this is like a blue one. Okay. And I've got a green and a red and a brass one. And you can see that, you can tell they're on the same team because even though they're different colors, they're the same scheme in terms of trim and yeah, that kind of thing. So this blue one is, you know, pretty colorful and bright, and this one is not. So, but I knew that would be the case because it's all gray. And you can contrast it with the first one I did, which was all shiny. The bronze one. It's a shiny one, and then this one is definitely not shiny. The last one I'm going to do is this one that had the sword not work. The sword blade didn't print, but I used other parts of the sword to repair broken swords. Okay, so this guy's just started cheering folks on. Yay, you do that, right? I'm going to make this like a silver dragonkin, so it's going to be really shiny, like the bronze brass one, okay? But it will be just tones of silvery metallics, like steel and duraluminum, aluminium and chrome and things. And I think it will look just weird. It'll just be really shiny. But, you know, it doesn't have a weapon and is just going, hey, yay, yay, go do things, dragonkin. But I don't know what other color to use, really. Blue, green, red, black. Could do brown, but that would look even worse than this in terms of interest. So I'm not going to. I'm just going to paint it a little silvery, make it look
really shiny because shininess. I've got some dark colors. Dark aluminum's pretty dark, but I think in order to get the contrast, I'm going to paint the base coat armor steel and just use like aluminium. For the trim, maybe even chrome. And then the body color, I think I'll make either aluminium or dark aluminium or dural aluminium. There's different shades. I don't have to worry about that at the moment, though, because I am going to be painting the base of this dragonkin. And as we get later and later in the stream, my focus, I tend to lose focus a little bit. So even though this is pretty straightforward, you never know. Continue watching, because I might reach over, I might knock over a paint bottle. You know, I might drop something and break it. Maybe nothing will happen. That's the fun about relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons, is that usually something happens, sometimes more than one thing, and you just never really know. And it was like that silver paint, that gun, the chainmail silver that I opened the jar to put a little bit of thinner in, and there happened to be paint for some reason all over the top of it. I pulled it off and it got all over my hands. Sometimes, there's always the opportunity for some unexpected excitement on relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. And you get to hear about things like, I start talking about the models I bought and get off and have it like a history lesson about 1950s era strategic bombers like the B-36. Okay. Or the B-52, which came later. There's a B-47. That was a smaller version. It had 6 jet engines instead of 8. It's called intermediate range because it couldn't, even if it was stationed way up north like in Alaska, it couldn't reach the Soviet Union. But, it was built anyway, kind of like a test bed to some extent for the B-52. And the B-52 even became a hairstyle. Talk about that. How many airplanes became immortalized in a hairstyle like the B-52? And if you don't know what that is, the internet might be able to tell you, right? Maybe they'll get it right. Maybe it'll tell you that, but there was a hairstyle called that. Some of those planes from the 1950s and early 60s just lasted forever. Like the B-52 is still in service. And there were an Air Force tanker, a refueling plane based out of Boeing 707. The 707s went out of commercial service probably like 35 years, 40 years ago. They were the first really significant passenger jet airliner because they had a very long range. But they made a tanker version, a refueling plane out of it. And those have been in service. They upgrade them and they do maintenance and things, change out the engines, fix the cracks,
you have to do that kind of stuff, but those things have been flying for like 60 years. B-52s too. Some of the things, I mean, you can say, okay, boomer, right? And that's fair. It's fair to do that. But some of the things that were done in the boomer time, like B-52s and stuff, you know, have been hanging around, you know, getting in the way of new things, just like some of us. So we're still around, getting in the way of people running things who are younger, but you still have a lot of 60, 70-year-old planes flying around because, you know, nobody could do anything better since then. Go figure. Okay, so I'm just making this gray, and then what I do, like with the rest of them, is I get out the dark gray wash and I blot it on to make it look less monochrome. I really kind of like the, you know, this isn't very bright, okay, this armor, but that dark gray, you know, it's nice and flat, and it's nice rich color. And with the light gray trim on it, I think it looks pretty decent. Yeah, so this one's not bad. So what I should do, you know, I should do those darker though. I'm going to do the tips of the horn of the spikes. I'm not going to do them light. I'm going to get a little bit of that like NATO black paint that I had before. Pull that out again and try to catch just the tips of the spikes, just so that you can see them a little better, a little offset. This is my effort to do the dry brushing kind of thing that I can't do. I'm just catching the tips of these. Putting hardly any paint on the brush. Just catching them and then bringing in a little bit of paint up. That are a little more visible. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with it any more than that. It'll just end up, yeah, this will end in tears, as some might say. As I might say, because that kind of thing has in the past ended badly. Nicole would have done an excellent job of highlighting those, run it down, you know, across, and made it look really cool. But as I said, she has skills that I could only imagine. Okay, so this is the dark gray wash, and I'm going to give this a good stir here. So on the silver one, I'm going to paint the armor the darkest metallic we have, and the trim is going to be the lightest metallic we have. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I have enough room in between to pick a color for the skin that is between the two. Okay? Which will either be duraluminum or dark aluminum, or as the bottle says, aluminium or dark aluminium. And I'll probably do a little bit of a color swatch kind of thing, test just to see. And I might do that, yet
today. Okay, 1 drop would have been enough. 1 drop of the wash would have been enough, but I put in 2 drops so that I can waste the wash. So I'm just dabbing this on because I don't want it to be uniform. I want it to look lumpy. That's one thing I have been able to do, is when it comes to making things look kind of lumpy and non-uniform and that kind of thing. I've been able to do that because look at the skill. It's like, do everything you can to make this look like if you were really trying to paint something that wouldn't be it. Right? Get a bit on the tail there. Stands out there. You can't see it too much anymore. Okay. I'm going to do the edge, and then I'm going to go back and put more blots on the top, just so that there's dark areas and light areas. Yeah, so, what, 1950s era strategic bombers, super train versus Snowpiercer. Which one is more likely to be real? You know, they're both not going to be real, but which one would be, if something were to be real, which one would it be? Yeah, that kind of stuff. What else is there to talk about? We've got about a half hour left. A little bit, not enough time to get started on the other model, but a little too long otherwise. So I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. And what I will do is take these off. I'll leave them now, because I'm going to even put them away so I don't break them or something. There we go. So I can say that today there was just one disaster. That was with that silver paint, and it's still on. I cleaned it off like 3 times. It's still on me. That's whatever that is. That particular paint, that chainmail silver, it just jumps. It jumps out of its bottle onto your skin. So if you got any of this, if you got any of that chainmail silver, you know, and you're tempted to like open it or use it or something, just be aware that it is, is that a mouse? Great. That it's going to jump out on you and get all over your hands. And if you touch something, then it'll get all over whatever you touch. It's just going to do that. What I need is a piece of white paper that isn't a paper towel. Here. Yeah, maybe there. That's a color chart. Can't use that. Oh, this will work. Oh god, these are even. This is even better. This actually was a color chart. Look at that. I
I was testing paints for a reason that I can't remember. Pearlescent paint and the flat paint and the blue paint with this silvery kind of overlay. I don't know why I was doing this. Probably trying to make it look like water. That one works. Whatever that was. Pearl green blue with some metallic over it. But the other side has nothing on it. Which is good, because what I want to do, and I'm going to use one of these larger brushes, because I'm comparing colors here. I'm going to be comparing and contrasting. I'm just going to use this one. All these brushes are now in the way. This is in the way. And I also need a pen. Like a regular pen. I don't have that, so I'm going to abuse this pen. Steel. Dark aluminium. Aluminium. I've got white aluminium. That might be cool. Regular aluminium, white, and that might be enough. So I'm going to put little color swatches of these here. This is the steel, that's the white. Dull. There's two of these open. Okay. There's another bottle of wash. I don't know how that got there. This plain aluminium. What else is here? Silver. Can use that. Another steel. Okay. So this kind of thing is easy to do. And I've got these color swatches elsewhere, but I just want to make sure that they're working okay. This last one I'm going to be painting is just going to be all of these colors, and you'll see them. And it will hurt your eyes. It's gonna be just so bright and silvery and everything. I should start with the lightest one and work up to the darkest one, right? That would make more sense. If I use the same brush, even if I wash it in between. So these paints are made for airplanes primarily. They're thin enough to be used for airbrushing, so they flow. Just a little bit of it flows and covers a large surface area. But you have to be kind of careful with them because they're thin, and they don't necessarily stay put. If you know what I mean, they will flow. This is the white aluminium. So these are all different colors, because even though you think of like a World War II airplane that's aluminum or aluminium, or some of the more modern ones where they didn't paint them, they're different metals on different parts of them. So like the fuselage will be different than, especially on the wings, the control surfaces on the wings, like the flaps and the ailerons and the elevator and rudders, were oftentimes different color. In fact, in World War II, even some of the control surfaces were fabric covered. The internal structure might have been made out of metal, but the control surfaces themselves might have been fabric rather than metal. And different panels on the plane would be made out of slightly different colors. And so these all these subtly different colors of metallic paints are there so that you can get authentic airplane models. And if I ever build one, and if I figure out how to use the airbrush, you might actually see that happen. So basically, this is the same paint. They're paints that have tiny little metal flakes right in them, and different amounts of black pigment. So they get darker, even though the same base paint is there, they get darker because of varying amounts of pigment, which is why it's really important that they be mixed very thoroughly, because otherwise, each one will look the same as the other. I'm using a paper towel to open these and close them because remember that silver paint that jumped out all over my hand? Yeah, that can happen with this. But I'm not wanting to repeat that experience particularly. So this one you can tell immediately is quite a bit darker. The duraluminum is darker than the plain aluminium. And when I drop the droplet on there, you can see the dark pigment kind of come around the edges. So this is, the last couple of minutes of the stream is probably as good a use as any. This is probably good a use as any of the time. So Dice and Dungeons started out as a group of friends and relatives conducting a Dungeons and Dragons campaign in a world put together by our dungeon mistress Alexis. That started over a year ago and continues to this day. You should watch it. We stream 3 Sundays a month with a live chat on Sunday at 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. When we go to Standard Time, that time will change as well. Okay, and the campaign is really a lot of fun to do, and I think it's a lot of fun to listen to and watch. So please do that if you're a fan of Dungeons and Dragons or a fan of Dice and Dungeons, regardless of whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or not. It's a really fun time. Please join in. And since we decided to stream it, we decided that we wanted to have good props, not just a 1x1 plastic grid on which we played. So we got ourselves some models of our minifigs. And I painted the first ones. I did those. And I think they came out pretty nice. But then we decided, actually Alexis decided to get a 3D printer and started printing all sorts of cool things like tents and campfires and pillars and walls and things like that. And those are all for our D&D campaign and for our stream. Yeah, so I did some time ago that you can see the steel is much darker. Some time ago that if we were going to be painting all of these things, why not stream the painting as well? And that's how Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons got started. This was all about painting the dungeon tiles and minifigs that we use in our D&D stream. And that continues to this day. Like today I was painting one of the minifigs, number 5 in a series of 6 dragonkin.
Okay. And hi, thank you. Thank you for the new follow. I really appreciate it. Welcome. So I was explaining that, and yeah, so dungeon tiles and minifigs for use in our stream. And as I tell everybody, I keep reminding you every stream, at least once, sometimes more than once, I am not a professional or even skilled painter or model builder. I am an adequate model painter, but basically I'm painting props for our D&D stream, and eventually, if you like them, dungeon tiles that might be available to you. And I'm going to show these off. I do this most streams, but not always, but I've got time this time. These are examples of the kind of dungeon tiles that we have started producing. These are painted with a base coat. They will be coated with a dark gray wash to make them look a lot more lifelike. But these are like 4 of them here, and they're really cool because I want to show you how our dungeon tiles now work. This is like the 4th or 5th iteration of the printing process. These are done now as one single piece, except for the base plate, and I'll explain that in a minute, so that the wall and the base, all of this is a single piece. The first ones we were doing, the wall and the base, were actually separate pieces, and we used epoxy and put them together, and it was fragile, and it was hard to get it to line up. So this means that it's always at a perfect 90-degree angle, and when you line them up next to each other, they stay lined up, whereas some of them might have been tilted and things. So that was a huge innovation on the part of Alexis in the printing of all of this. And then in the base, there are tiny little holes, and ball magnets go in there. Okay, so there are 8 little ball magnets, 2 on each side here. And what that means is that they're magnetized, but not magnetized so that they stick to a metal surface. You can see this is definitely not. This is high-tech cardboard work surface here, cut out of a box. You know, I do really expensive high-tech things on my streams. But what that means is that they stick to each other. Look at that. And they come apart really easily. These were originally designed so that you could use clips and you could clip them together, but those were hard. I mean, you could put them together, but they were hard to take apart and rearrange. But these, you can do amazing things with them. They hold well enough together that you can do that, okay, on any surface at all, but you can rearrange them in many different configurations very easily. Okay, so when you get enough of these, you can make really pretty elaborate dungeons, and you can see some of those that kind of pop up underneath me on this stream. But I wanted to show these off because this is a major part of Dice and Dungeons, and when we've got tiles to paint, they usually come in batches of like 30 to 50, and it takes just a lot of paint with big brushes and then detail highlights and washing and things. Haven't done that in a while because I finished sewers, and then Nikki painted a whole bunch of streets. When they are the cobblestone streets that go in between things. So you can see like these are painted on both the front and the back. So mostly if we're doing a dungeon, you're seeing the inside, right? You're all inside the building. But if you got a street tile, you can also look at the outside of the building, and you could put a street along here, and you could have a street with walls with a building here, and you can go from the street to the building and back to the street. So that's the latest thing, is street tiles, and we might see those at some point if we ever get out of the sewers again on our stream. So that's the major thing. Dice and Dungeons is about dungeon tiles, and secondarily about minifigs, like the dragonkin I've been working on, and some others that I was doing before that. And let me pop this one off of the sticky tack. Sometimes it sticks a little too much, and on other times it doesn't stick at all. there we go. I'm going to show off the dragonkin family here. I don't know if it's a family or a cult or I don't know. You have to use your imagination. Whatever it is, there's 6 of them. There's 6 of them because that's how many were printed on the rosin printer. Okay? And I thought, well, dragons come in different colors, and dragonkin certainly would as well. So these are the major dragon color families: green and red and blue and black and bronze. Okay, that's what these are, No, we haven't printed dice. That's still to be done anyway. So this is kind of how these have come out. Just show you a couple of them. And this is the one I finished today. Yeah, it's pretty bland looking, right? But sometimes you get flashy and sometimes you don't. It's a matter of taste. Depends on what dragonkin family you come from. And this one, I think this is going to come out and this is going to end up looking silly, I think, but that's okay. The sword never got printed, and actually there was just a stub of a sword. So I said, well, it's got a raised fist. Why not? Right? Instead of holding a sword, it's doing a huzzah. And that's why I did this test pattern of these different metallics, because the armor, this one's going to be silver. So I'm going to paint the armor steel, which is the darkest of them. And then I'm going to use either aluminium or white aluminium. And I'm saying aluminium because they're the AO paints made in Europe. And that's what they say there. It's not aluminum, it's aluminium. Let me prove it to you. Look. See, aluminium. Yeah, so I'm going to do the armor in steel, which is our darkest, and then either plain aluminium or white aluminium to do the trim, so that I can keep the dark armor, lighter colored trim motif going. Okay, and then probably something in the middle, like duraluminum or the skin color. I want it to be lighter than the armor, but darker than the trim. So one of those two, depending on how dark the steel ends up looking when it goes on here. And then I'll use different colors for the pouches like I've done before. And yeah, that'll be that. Maybe I'll even use gray or something for the pouches. Just, because I don't have that many different, the differences here are subtle, and they really show up if you were to put these on an airplane with different panels adjacent to each other, but it might not be that obvious here. Anyway, there's my color palette for Monday. So when I come back on Monday with Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, these 5 will be done. And this one, the weaponless one, I'm going to start putting very shiny metallic paint on it, and we'll just see how it turns out. And if it looks silly, well, I can either just toss it or reprime it. Didn't say reprime it. This one never got primed, which is just as well, because I have to prime a piece for Submarine Wednesday next week, and I will prime this at the same time. I have a bulkhead that I need to prime for Submarine Wednesday because we're getting into a very difficult area of fabrication. One of the decks of the submarine doesn't fit. It's a 1/10 of an inch too long on one side and a 1/10 of an inch too short on the other side. And I need to extend one side by fabricating an extension and cementing it on and sanding it smooth, and sand down the other side so that it fits, so that the periscopes slide into the periscope tubes. Yeah, that submarine's been like that. So if you want to see the reason for cost overruns and delays, construction delays in the building of a model submarine, join us on Submarine Wednesday and you will see a fine example of why it's taking 3 times longer for twice the price. I mean, not real cost, but just in terms of time is money, it's taking extra time. Yes, that. So thank you for joining in. This has been Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, minifig edition. The dragonkin, I've been getting about like 1 done in a stream. You know, the 3.5 hours I spend painting, I've been able to get 1 done, and at an adequate level of detail and precision. Not a real fine level, but an adequate level, right? And yeah, continue that tradition of adequateness. Yeah, you saw the dungeon tiles, you see the minifigs, I explained what DnD is about. We talked about post-World War II strategic bombers. We talked about how things made in the 60s continue to be valuable, like B-52s and KC-135s. Okay. Because we haven't come up with hardly anything better in the 60 years since. Just a plug for, things that were made back then. Kind of an irrelevancy, but fun. Let's see, did some paint testing. And yeah, got some new followers. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining as followers. If you can, become a follower, whether you catch this during the stream. If you catch it on YouTube, you can become a YouTube subscriber. That would be really amazing. And if you really like Dice and Dungeons and you want us to continue forever and ever and ever, you can go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons, patreon.com/diceanddungeons, and become a patron. And if you become a patron, you get to see our warm-up sessions, our improv warm-up sessions for our D&D stream. And you can also see some of the Dungeon Master notes, Dungeon Mistress notes that Alexis used for our sessions. And I really kind of enjoyed reading those because I am a patron of ourselves. I get to read those. It's really kind of interesting to read her explanation for and description of what she thought we were going to be doing during that session. And it's fun to read that, to see what she was prepared for and what she wasn't, and what we as a group spontaneously made a mess of, which was, something that she wasn't anticipating and had to just work around. I'm just trying to get this. I keep saying every single time, there's a little knob up here that you're supposed to be able to turn to keep this from rotating. It's like a tension knob kind of thing. And I keep saying every single time, I need to get that fixed so that this thing doesn't keep rotating. And every single time, I don't do anything about it. So keeping that tradition going, when you join me on Monday for Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, I will almost certainly talk about how this thing rotates, and there's a little, adjustment up there that's supposed to be able to tighten it so it doesn't rotate. I'll almost certainly say something about that. That's one of the ongoing themes of Relaxing Painting of Dice and Dungeons. Another theme is that something will happen, like a paint bottle will splish all over my hand in an unanticipated and unwelcome way, or I'll knock something over. Or I'll be painting something and it'll be going along extremely well, and then I'll reach over, get some more paint, and bring it back and bang the paint into a already painted area as I'm moving it to the surface I'm painting on. So that's another thing, another feature of exciting Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons is something is going to happen, and you just never know what or when. With that in mind, I'm going to then sign off. Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from more or less 10 until more or less 2 Eastern Daylight Time. please join in if you can. Chat if you'd like. Our chat channel. If not, watch on YouTube. That's also very welcome. And those of you who get a weekend, have a good weekend. Those of you who don't, thank you so much for the work that you do. And see you then on Monday. Bye.